This is the Speaking of Writers podcast. I'm Steve Richards. Clare Mulroy is USA Today's books reporter, covering new releases, publishing news, reader trends, and author features. Her favorite books often have weird female protagonists. We'll talk about that too. And sprawling family narratives. She loves speculative fiction and prides herself on giving niche book recommendations. Claire has been with USA Today since 2022. In 2023, her reporting on bisexual affirming healthcare won the NLGJA Excellence in Bisexual Coverage Award. She studied journalism at American University in Washington, D.C., based now in New York City, USA Today World Headquarters. Happy to have, for the very first time, Clare Mulroy join me here on Speaking of Writers. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat books with you.
So, the big question here, what is the story behind you becoming the books reporter for USA Today?
So I've been at USA Today for about 2.5 years now since I graduated college, kind of did the traditional intern to fellow to reporter pipeline. I was an SEO reporter, which is a very, fancy technical term for just saying that I was answering a lot of reader questions for a column that we had, a page called Just Curious. Sometimes that was healthcare, sometimes it was politics, sometimes it was pet care. I got a lot of really good trivia knowledge from that job. And part of the time I was writing about bookish questions, answering questions that our readers had about where can I buy books for cheap and where can I donate books if I'm doing some spring cleaning. Got more and more into that world of books reporting, loved it. I'm a lifelong reader and writer. And so it was really a dream. And eventually we got to a point where there were so many stories we wanted to do, but we didn't have the time to, with my normal responsibilities. And so we just decided, let's go all in on this. Let's show our readers that we are really prioritizing our book section in 2025.
I know you grew up on Cape Cod. Where did
Yes.
your love of reading come from?
I think like most readers, it started from my parents. My mom was a teacher for a very long time. She's a writer. She's had stints as a bookseller and is very involved with our local library. She's a total bookworm, and it was not unusual for us to spend the entire day, some weekends at the library. But we used to have this massive tote bag that we would bring around, and my sister, my brother, and I would just, fill it to the brim with books. And, my aunt is also a bookseller, and pretty much everyone in my family is a bookworm. For Christmas last year, we did a Secret Santa, but it was everybody had to get a book for someone, and it was just totally perfect for my family. So, I've always been a reader. I think during COVID, I really revamped my love of reading as an adult. I remember I read The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, and that like really got me back into reading and excited about it. And I think there's this period when you graduate college of, you have a lot more time when you're not doing homework and after school activities and clubs. So reading kind of became my after school activity in a way that it hadn't been since I was a kid.
Why weird female protagonists for you?
I don't know. I think I'm a very like character driven reader. So I think when I love a coming of age story. I love a book where there's you're just really inside one character's head, even though I do really love a multi perspective too. But if there's, I love like when female characters just going through like some messy, like young 20s stuff, I find like the weirder the better. So that could be something that's a little bit more speculative, a little bit more in the horror section, or it could be just, someone going through their day. I really like those kind of like slice of life literary fiction books.
Let's talk about hot genres right now. I'm starting to book. I know romantasy is huge. What Rebecca
Oh
Yarros'
yeah.
big release here, as we're full disclosure, we're recording this here on January 30th. Um, but that's a big one. I know I'm starting to book more on this
Mhm.
podcast authors in that genre. What else are you seeing trend wise right now?
Yeah, I mean, so the romantasy is huge. I mean, last week, I spent most of the week with that fandom of the Fourth Wing Onyx Storm. I was at the midnight release party at Barnes and Noble, and a lot of folks told me they hadn't seen a midnight release celebration like that since the days of the Hunger Games, Harry Potter. I think one of my favorite things lately is how how niche these fandoms are getting within books of it's not just like the fantasy readers anymore. It's the cozy fantasy readers, or it's the urban cozy fantasy readers. And there's this especially I think with Gen Z, a lot of times in online book communities, you're seeing these, it's not just romance, it's not just fantasy, it's romantasy now. So I'm really seeing books like Onyx Storm have that kind of very, very viral run. And readers cannot, they can't get enough of it.
Are you seeing now? You mentioned you're out at Barnes and Noble. All right, and we have great. I'm based in Asheville, North Carolina. We have great indie bookstores here, which we love.
Yeah.
Are you seeing more people going out to the bookstores
For release parties, you mean?
for release parties and in general when you are out at
Yeah.
bookstores?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think a lot of us, I think so, I'll be, scrolling on TikTok on the kind of book talk side of things, and I'll just see people going and saying, this is my favorite local bookstore. This is my neighborhood bookstore that I always go to. This is my neighborhood cafe and bookstore. I think like even though there are a lot of e-readers in younger generations, I think there's still such a love of bookstores. I just did a story on bookshop.org, who is, they just launched this new app where you can get a digital book, but all the proceeds, 100% of the profit goes to a local bookstore. So I think that there is definitely still a continuing love for local bookstores and supporting them. And it's more than just going to buy a book and make a purchase. It's an activity. It's something that I will go and just browse and kind of have a fun time and see what people are talking about and see what booksellers are recommending. I think that's some of my favorite ways to get new reads, is to see the bookseller recommend tabs.
Well, speaking of recommending, let's talk books now and suggestions from Clare Mulroy. Let's first start with January, just about done. Some of the hot books from January, looking back here at the first month of the new year.
Yeah, obviously Onyx Storm was a big one, but I would say two others that I read and really enjoyed were Homeseeking by Carissa Chen. This is, it's kind of a sweeping family epic, and it follows, these childhood friends turned lovers turned strangers across the Chinese diaspora as they're displaced from their homes. They lose each other, they reconnect. This really touched me so deeply, and it was really, really a wonderful read. I also really loved Good Dirt by Charmaine Wilkerson, who wrote Black Cake. This follows the daughter of an affluent Black New England family, sort of New England royalty, whose life is thrust into the public spectacle after her brother is killed in a home invasion. And that kind of horrible notoriety follows her even into her adult years. This book also kind of spans generations, which I think is one of my favorite things in a book, is where you really get such a full picture of where family history started and its impacts even today.
All right, let's look ahead. Some books coming up this year that you're looking forward to. Some fiction and nonfiction too.
Yeah, I think for I'm looking forward to Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. It's the new Hunger Games book that's coming out in March. I was a huge Hunger Games kid, still am. I think there's been kind of a resurgence of it's having a comeback, with the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the movie of that, and the book of that. And I'm very excited to see this is set before the events of the Hunger Games. I'm really excited to see Haymitch before we knew him as that kind of sarcastic, disgruntled, but still lovable mentor to Katniss and Peeta. So I'm really excited to see the rollout of that, and if fans respond in the way that they did when the Hunger Games was, kind of at its heyday when it first came out. Let's see, Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid comes out in June. That's an epic love story that's set in the 1980s with a NASA team of female scientists being sent into space. This is outside of her kind of Daisy Jones, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo world. But I think that Taylor Jenkins Reid does such a masterful job of kind of bringing you into those historical moments. And she just crafts narratives and characters that are so compelling. And I'm really excited to see how different it is because it's set outside of that world, if there are similarities because it has that kind of historical element to it. Yeah, and then the other one I'm really looking forward to is Catabasis by R.F. Kuang, who is a fantasy writer. She took a departure to write her contemporary novel Yellowface, which blew up and was really, it was a great read. It kind of a call out of the whiteness of the publishing industry. So this is her return to fantasy. It's a dark academia fantasy about two graduate students who are taking a journey, a literal journey to hell to save their professor. And I'm really excited for that one.
Any good biographies coming out?
I just read Brooke Shields. This one is already
Mm.
out, I guess, but I just read Brooke Shields' memoir, and that one I thought was a really touching portrayal of um, womanhood. It's called Brooke Shields is Not Allowed to Get Old, and it did a really good job touching on the kind of societal expectations for women when it comes to beauty and aging and the way we talk about women's bodies. And to hear that from someone who's been in the public eye for so long, I really enjoyed reading that one.
How many books do you read on average in any given year?
Oh gosh. Last year I read 50 books a year, which was pretty
Mm.
typical for me. I've already read, I think, 6 or 7 books, and it's January 30th. So I think that's going to change this year, given that I'm becoming a professional reader.
It can be overwhelming when if I have too many in front of me, like you can see behind me. If I have too many in stacks in front of me, it definitely could be overwhelming. Do you ever do
Yeah, it's an
two at the same
exciting and
time?
overwhelming.
Will you do two at
Yeah,
the same
sometimes.
time?
I mean,
Yeah.
it depends. I think I have recently gotten into audiobooks. So sometimes I'll like to do a nonfiction audiobook and then read a physical book, or,
Mm.
we're experimenting as I get into this role.
How about an author or a couple of authors that have had a big impact on you?
I would say Sally Rooney,
Mm.
as you know, she writes really good, like kind of coming of age contemporary fiction. And I love the way that she writes characters. I think the mark of a really wonderful book and author for me is like when it makes me want to write more myself, and it makes me kind of get excited about literature, get excited about reading it and writing it. And she, you, every time I read a book by her, I just think like, wow, this is really good character development. And, she is able to also kind of mix in politics and like sentiments and commentary on capitalism, and really gets at what it means to be human. I remember in Intermezzo, I think there was a scene where character was like washing dishes or something. And I was like, this is the most beautiful description of washing dishes that I've ever seen in my life.
Mm.
And that one was really like that. Every time she comes out with something, it really, I feel like it just sticks me to my core and it means a lot to me.
Yeah, I love when authors describe food and just
Yeah.
great. The
Sometimes the
details.
most mundane things could be
Mundane,
the
yeah.
most beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so what is the best thing about being a books reporter?
Oh man, I would say I think just the fact that I get to read for a living is a really cool thing. But really, the most wonderful thing is getting to talk to bookish people all the time. Whether it's folks like yourself, or for interviews that I do, or working with publicists and people in the publishing industry side of things. The fact that I get to spend my day talking to people who already have kind of something in common with me of, we like to read books, but maybe it's a very different type of book that we like to read. I feel like I'm learning so much, and I always take something away from that because, we can all, teach each other a little bit about the different parts of the book world that we touch.
All right, and you're doing something this winter very fun in USA Today. You just launched it, I think, last week. It is the USA Today Winter Book Challenge. Talk about that a little bit, Claire.
Yeah, we had this idea just to kind of get our readers engaged a little bit, get them excited about reading, and up the stakes a little bit, give them, add some prize incentive in there. So if you read, you can fill out our bingo card. You can either read 4 books and take advantage of that free space in the middle, or go diagonal and read 5 books if you want, or go straight across and read 5 books. And if you fill it out, you submit it into us in our Google form, you'll be entered in a raffle to win a $100 gift card to bookshop.org, where you can go buy as many books as $100 will give you. And whatever books your heart desires. I think part of the reason with doing this is we wanted to make sure that it included every type of reader. So there's categories like as easy as, a fiction book, an audio book, but there's ones that are a little bit more specific, like, a book with a title in the color, a book that was recommended to you by a local bookseller. So you can get a little bit more niche, a little bit more general, and really find what works for you. And it's just, I think my goal here is just to keep people reading and to get them excited about reading.
And that's running through when?
It's running through March 21st. So you have a chance to submit until then. If you don't get a chance to submit then, we're going to be doing one for the spring as well, and the summer, hopefully. So you'll get a chance to try again
Yeah, the
or
summer.
try multiple times if you don't get it the first time.
Yeah, with all those summer beach reads too. You'll do it.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's
All
going
right.
to be an exciting year for books.
And for more info on that, usatoday.com.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. She's Clare Mulroy, the USA Today book reporter. And you can read more about her and her covering new releases, publishing news, reader trends, author features, and so much more at USA Today. Clare, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
And this is the Speaking of Writers podcast.